Hi there, I'm Lily and welcome back to my channel. In this series of tutorials I'm going to be showing you how to work the techniques required to work my Livingston vest pattern. However, these techniques will also be relevant to many other brioche patterns. So in this first video I'm going to show you how to cast on using the Italian cast on method, which is entirely optional for this pattern. You can just work a regular long tail cast on or other methods that you may be familiar with, but this method does produce a really nice invisible stretchy edge, which is handy for a neckline, so it works especially well for the high neck vest. So we're going to begin similarly to the long tail cast on in terms of leaving a long tail here. Sorry, it's just out of frame, but you can see a reasonably long tail, at least 2 to 3 times the length that you wish to cast on. So I'm just going to take that here, and I have a circular needle here, a long needle because I prefer to work small-ish circumferences using magic loop, as I find it more flexible and you can try on as you go. However, this would work equally well with DPNs or a short circular needle for the neckband. This is just the most flexible method and my preferred. So I have the long needle here for magic loop. Sorry, that's got tangled up there, ignore that. So I'm going to take my yarn with one long end here and the other end attached to my working yarn and start off with this kind of arrangement. So the yarn is wrapped around my thumb and my forefinger here, and it's just held in my fingers of the left hand here. And take a needle tip, and I'm going to begin by just placing a loop on the right hand needle, which could be a slip knot but doesn't need to be. So we're just going to insert the needle under that yarn and twist it round. So we just have a twisted loop, not even a secured loop. So to work the Italian cast on, the first step, you basically work 2 variations on a simple move. One to create the knit stitches, or well, stitches that present as knits, and one different move to create the purl stitches. So to create the knit kind of stitch, we're going to dip our yarn under the thumb, or dip our needle, sorry, around and under that thumb strand, then over the finger strand, and then we're going to loop it round back to the front, and there we have a stitch on the needle. So it does take a few attempts to get into the swing of this. And then for the next stitch we're going to go under the finger, over the thumb yarn, and back and round. So under the thumb, over the finger, and loop it around, under the finger, over the thumb yarn, and back around. So you can see it's starting to take shape. We have our original loop, our initial loop, and then a stitch that kind of looks like a knit stitch, and then what looks like a purl bump, followed by a knit stitch, then a purl bump. So it is tempting to do this very tight, but that does then make it quite difficult to keep your stitches from getting twisted if they get pulled too tight. So you don't need to leave it loose, just don't pull it excessively tight. So I'll continue with a few more. We've just done a purl bump stitch, we've sort of got a bump there. So we're ready for a knit stitch. So under the thumb, over the finger and round, under the finger, over the thumb, sorry, and round. Thumb, finger, round, finger, thumb, round. So I'm going to just continue now with this same method to cast on enough stitches to just to demonstrate working in the round for these purposes, just to show you. So under thumb, finger round, finger, thumb, round. Just need to pull off some more yarn. Thumb, finger round, finger, thumb, round. Thumb, finger round, finger, thumb, round. With this pattern we'll always be working an even number of stitches because we want to work in brioche. So we had our initial stitch, which was just a loop, then our knit presenting stitch, and then a purl presenting stitch. So to end up with an even number in total, we need to finish with a purl presenting stitch. So I've just done, I'll just undo that last one. My last stitch is under the finger, over the thumb and round. So now that final stitch, if you look closely, is made by this yarn, this thumb yarn, and this finger yarn is just sort of sat on top. It's not actually anchored to anything. So to produce the final stitch and to anchor everything in place, we're just going to place a loop on the needle. Just a loop like you would a backwards loop cast on with your thumb. So we're just going to, but using this yarn that is not yet attached, the finger yarn, just place a loop as so. The next step is probably the trickiest part, and I would say this is the section that makes it not particularly beginner friendly unless you're fairly adventurous, basically, as it's quite not tricky but fiddly, I would say, to join in the round without twisting. As you can see, it looks a bit of a twisty, not a mess, but it's not the neatest looking cast on edge at this point. It will become one. So I cast on 28 stitches. You will have cast on at least 50 something for this pattern, but this is enough to demonstrate with. And what we need to do now is rearrange the stitches in order to begin working magic loop. So I cast on 28, so I'm going to put 14 on each side. So counting stitches, this is where it gets a little tricky. You can see we have 2 stitches here. This counts as a knit stitch, and because this one has sort of a bump in the front, that's a purl stitch. And then this one here between my thumbs is presenting as more like a knit stitch. So we just need to carefully count along and make sure that they don't become twisted. Like you can see, these 2 stitches between my thumbs here don't really look very clear at all, but when I pull that down a little, it becomes a bit clearer that that is a purl stitch and a knit stitch. So I'm going to count along, count 14. 2, 4, 6. See what I mean? It wants to twist all over the place. 8, 10, 12, 14. So that's my 14. So as I'm working in magic loop, this is where I'm going to pull my loop through halfway along. So between that 14th stitch and the next stitch. So now I have a loop, and I can push these first stitches that my yarn isn't currently attached to up towards the needle tip. It's a little bit easier to keep them in place on the actual needle tip where they're snugger rather than around the cable. So I'm going to push them up towards my needle tip, but I'm not certain yet that those aren't twisted, so I'll go along this edge now checking. So we have a knit stitch, then a purl stitch, 2, knit, then a purl, 4, knit, then a purl, 6, knit, then a purl, 8, knit, then a purl, 10, oh, we're a bit twisted here, knit, then a purl, 12, and then these last 2 might need just sort of shufting into place, knit, then a purl, 14. Okay, so we have these stitches in my left hand are definitely not twisted now. I've got those in place. So I'm going to pull my needle through so that these are more in a position to begin magic loop. But before I actually do so, I'm going to check again that my stitches are on the inside, as you would normally when joining in the round. Just have to be super careful not to twist your work. And if you make a mistake on the first round and it's a little twisted, or I say a little twisted, if it's just twisted, don't be surprised. It took me a couple of attempts to get used to this method, but it does produce a very lovely edge. It is worth it. So I think I'm good to go with all the stitches on the inside there, not twisted. And push these up towards the needle tip, and you can see they're a bit clearer that they're not twisted, so we've just got to make sure we don't introduce any twists elsewhere now. And pull some yarn off. I have my loop ready. This may be easier if you are using a short circular, but then you don't have the extra magic loopiness to complicate things. So if we were working in 1x1 rib now, we'd work a couple of tubular rows, but I've experimented with a couple of different methods and I find that they're not entirely necessary for a neat edge. So we're going to begin just working a brioche stitch setup row, which involves doing a slip one yarn over. So I have my yarn in front of my right hand needle because I'm going to work a yarn over with this first slip stitch. So I'm going to slip that purlwise, slip purlwise. My yarn is already in front, so that's the yarn over taken care of. And just due to the way that this cast on works, okay, so yeah, we're going to just work a knit stitch as normal now, not a BRK, just a regular knit stitch. Yeah, and now due to the way this cast on works, our purl stitches, or the stitches that are presenting as purls, are currently sitting the wrong way on the needle, so we need to sort those out. So I'm going to work my yarn over, but instead of slipping purlwise like I did on that first stitch, because that was just the initial loop, that wasn't really part of the cast on, you can see my stitch is sitting the wrong way round, so to sort that out I need to slip it through the back loop. Slip purlwise through the back loop. And then the next knit stitch is sitting as normal, so I'm just going to knit that, yarn over, slip one purlwise through the back loop, knit one. So this is your brioche stitch setup row, where you're placing these extra yarn overs that don't actually count as stitches, they're just paired with the brioche stitch. I would recommend having a go at basic brioche following one of my previous tutorials before attempting this cast on, so that you're familiar with the brioche stitch rather than trying to attempt brioche and an Italian cast on in the round in one go. So yarn over, slip one purlwise through the back loop, knit one, yarn over, slip purlwise through the back loop, knit one, yarn over, slip one purlwise through the back loop, knit one, yarn over, slip one purlwise through the back loop, knit one. So we've worked across the first needle there. So now I'm going to take care again, excuse me, when transitioning to the other half of my round. So I'm just pulling my magic loop needle through here. I'm going to push these next stitches. It's when your stitches get stretched out like this that they become very unclear what they are. They are generally easier to spot when they're scrunched up. So we're going to scrunch those, and now we can pull this batch around to the other side. Again, probably wouldn't attempt this as your first magic loop project. This is something to do if you're comfortable working with magic loop or whatever your preferred method in the round is, and have worked brioche stitch before. Otherwise, a normal cast on will do absolutely fine, so long as you work it quite loose, then you have enough stretch. So we're going to work exactly the same again. Yarn in front because we need a yarn over. Slip purlwise through the back loop just to reorientate that stitch. Knit one. Yarn over, slip one purlwise through the back loop. Knit one, yarn over, purlwise through the back loop, knit one, yarn over, push these up, purlwise through the back loop, knit one, yarn over, purlwise TBL, knit 1, yarn over, purlwise through the back loop, knit 1, yarn over. I mean, these are a little loose at the end just because they're not secured yet, so I'm just going to give that end a tug there. Purlwise through the back loop, and then this last stitch was just that was the thumb loop that you put on at the end of the row, so that might have gone a little tight, but it should just be a regular stitch. Wait, where are we here? Knit 1. So make sure that that end doesn't start coming unravelled, it stays in place because that does form a stitch. So we've completed the first round there, and I think I'm good on no twisty front. Let's just bring it around to check. Looks like they're all sitting where they should. But yes, don't be too perturbed or too alarmed if that takes a couple of attempts. And I will show you how to continue working brioche stitch in the round in the next video.